Hello again everyone and welcome back to the Underground. This is the Intel update for September 21st through the 27th, 2025. It's been one of those weeks again where it seems like a whole year's worth of events have transpired over the past few days, so let's get right to it and talk about some of the things that have been of note this week. This week, the theme is war and speech, on many fronts and for many different reasons. Both here at home and overseas in the United Kingdom, speech concerns have been paramount this week, with various congressional testimonies in Washington confirming what we already know from the COVID era of censorship on platforms like YouTube, Google, and other social media platforms, but also overseas in a same but different kind of way. The speech concerns throughout the United Kingdom have become rather serious, as one might expect based on the implementation a few weeks ago of the Online Safety Act and the recent hard push to silence any sort of dissenting opinion on social events and things like immigration. Things have gotten quite serious around the UK. Like I pointed out on The Wire last night, one of the biggest problems with the speech crimes and the random arrests in the middle of the night that are being carried out throughout the UK is that there are gag orders on a lot of the people that are being arrested. So it's very popular these days to fling around words like, the Stasi or the, secret police or things like that. But that's quite literally what's happening in the UK at this point. But how widespread this is, nobody seems to know. All we know is that a lot of big voices and even small voices are being snatched off the street or from their homes and being thrown in prison for a couple hours and charged with various speech crimes because they under their anxiety laws. So in the UK, if you call someone anxiety on social media, you can be arrested for that. It doesn't even have to be a comment or anything. It can just be a simple repost or even something that you simply looked at. It's gotten quite dystopian, and we shall see what the general public does with this recent push for a national mandatory digital ID. Will this be the final straw, or will this be just the start of something else? I do not know. So I'm sorry to say the situation in the UK is rather up in the air at the moment. There's not really any sort of conclusion at the moment. The bright side is that this is going to force more people to start investing more in their communications infrastructure as best they can. And there are some ways to improve the situation on that front, but more on that later. On the theme of warfare, here in the United States, things are not doing so well on the domestic unrest front, especially with the recent announcements this morning, which are causing more questions than answers, which we'll get to in a moment, but also down south in the Caribbean Sea, where war appears to be on the menu still. So moving down south, let's talk strategic movement, and once again, really the only strategic movement that I'm kind of focusing on that I'm aware of is the deployments to the Caribbean Sea. So everything remains as before as far as I can tell. I haven't had much time to update these slides and figure out where a lot of these vessels are at. If ships go a long time without making a port call, it's kind of hard to find out where they're at, so that's just the nature of ship tracking. It's been that way since we had to track ships with, spotter planes and biplanes and things like that back in the day. Same in today's world. When ships go out to sea and they get out of AIS tracking range and they turn off their transponders, or they just get out of range of transponders, we don't know where they're at. So most of these ship trackers from various websites and things like that are stale by a few days to weeks. So that's why there isn't very much change on this sort of thing. However, various media groups are saying that the White House and the Pentagon are preparing to conduct kinetic strikes within Venezuela, not just narco vessels. So that's pretty much it. It's just rumor at the moment. However, President Trump does not have a very good poker face when it comes to military things, as evidenced by the strikes in Iran, the involvement with things in the Middle East in general, and stuff like that. So when a journalist asked President Trump, were we considering striking targets within Venezuela, he said, we'll see, which most people seem to assume is a giant yes, but we're not going to say just yet. That's a pretty solid assessment. Maduro is the kind of guy where bluffing doesn't really work, and President Trump has proven that on the military front, he doesn't bluff. When we're talking about invading or striking or bombing something, we end up doing it in some form or fashion a few weeks later. So it makes perfect sense. I would expect it, honestly. It would not surprise me in the slightest. So that's why I'm continuing to talk about Venezuela and kind of keep that on my radar for a while, because, it's been a while since the U.S. has toppled a regime in South America, but I guess we're due for another one here pretty soon. But who knows? I guess we'll have to see how that works out. More pressingly, here on the home front, there have been a lot of kinetic events this week. I'm going to do a deep dive on this at some point, so please just give me some time. But for right now, most of the unrest is going to be centered in Portland, or has been centered in Portland, but it will kick up here probably this afternoon, and also Chicago. So we'll talk more about the unrest here in just a moment, because as I was putting together these slides this morning, some more current information came out on that, which is going to probably change things this coming week. But just to mention the other kinetic events that have occurred this week, we of course had the shooting at Nellis Air Force Base at the front gate. I don't know what this was in this case, probably gang initiation, or if not, just some crazy guy who decided that it would be a great idea to shoot at the front gate of a military base. Either way, the base personnel obliged and put him in the hospital, so when they release his name, I haven't seen his name, the name of the suspect yet. We'll figure out what this guy's deal was. But it was just one guy, so status quo. But in the context of the other shootings this week, I did want to mention it because in Dallas, we of course have the ICE ambush, which was the sniper attack at one of the ICE detention facilities in Dallas. Just to cut right to the chase on this one, it looks like it was probably another far-left terrorist kind of thing. The feds have not released any of the details on the shooting, but apparently he had a bunch of handwritten notes either on him or in his vehicle or something to that effect, which allegedly state, again, I can't confirm this because I don't have the documents, but the feds are saying that the notes they found on this guy state that he intentionally wiped his own digital fingerprint, so he wiped all his social media accounts so that we couldn't do the standard thing that, the internet does and find everything out about this guy once he's dead, So that would explain why we haven't been able to find anything on him, if that's true. The other detail is that he intentionally said that he wanted to conduct a terrorist attack. So once again, don't have the primary source material, so I can't tell you if that's true or not. I'm just telling you what the feds say. And so far, it kind of lines up with the meticulous level of planning this guy would have had to have gone through. This was not just some nut job who, spur of the moment decided to take a pistol and charge at a facility. No, this guy actually planned it. It was more deliberate, more planned, and well, it's just kind of the sign of the times and the escalation of forces occurring all around the United States. And speaking of the information front, I wanted to briefly mention this because most of you should already know this is kind of, water under the bridge at this point, but congressional testimony did come out this week that once again confirmed that the Biden White House did in fact order platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google in general to censor specific social media posts and specific ideas in direct violation of the First Amendment. It's about as smoking gun as you can get. I will link, of course, the mainstream media article from the Washington Times, which is a normie-friendly source for those of you who want to share it around, and also the raw link directly to the government portal where you can download the congressional findings report on this sort of thing. But yeah, it's pretty smoking gun. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it's kind of, again, something that we've already known for many, many years. But yeah, it's just important to be aware of, especially in the context of what's going on in the UK. Now, moving to the more time-sensitive news this morning, things are a-happening in Washington, D.C. A couple of hours ago, President Trump posted this rather important notice to Truth Social, and only to Truth Social as far as I can see, which he is fond of doing, but still, apparently he has ordered the deployment of troops to Portland to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. So yeah, that's kind of developing right now. My guess is things are going to get pretty hot here over the next few days, especially in places like Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, your big Antifa strongholds, right? Especially in places like Seattle where they, no kidding, actually do control like parts of the city, right? There are places of the city where like the police just won't go. They may not admit it, but they don't because Antifa runs a good portion of some of the territory of Seattle. Same thing in Portland, but it's a little bit more spread out in Portland. But either way, very important development if we're going to start deploying troops to Portland. Probably, my guess, just shooting from the hip here, my guess is it's probably going to look a lot like Los Angeles. I don't know if they're going to send the Marines, or when he says troops, he doesn't say National Guard, Marines, or anything. My guess is probably National Guard to help guard some of the ICE facilities, because if you look at a lot of the ICE facilities in Portland, they're very vulnerable to swarming attacks that Antifa is known for. And if they want to get more kinetic, then they're going to need some backup. So this is definitely shifting into more of a kinetic sort of thing. And you've definitely got every single political person involved in this in the local areas of places like Chicago and Portland. They are stoking the fires. They are getting people riled up right again. And it's not looking great when it comes to toning things down. I don't think they're going to be toning things down anytime soon. So they've been looking for a way to stick it to the Trump administration or regime or whatever for a while now. And I think they found it. And that way to do that is domestic terrorism. And I'm not talking about the cheap stuff they talk about in Congress. I'm talking about actual, no kidding, legit terrorism. people like me don't throw the word terrorism around very lightly these days, so when I say terrorism, just know that I'm talking about the real kind. I'm not talking about you got called the wrong pronoun on social media or something like that. That's not terrorism. And just as a side note, what you may be wondering why Portland instead of Chicago. I have a sneaking suspicion as to why they're starting to crack down in Portland first when they've been talking about Chicago for a while now. And that was the event that occurred last night in which the great warrior poet himself, Ice Cube, had his tour bus firebombed by Antifa terrorists who possibly, potentially, maybe thought that the word ice in Ice Cube was actually related to immigration and customs enforcement. This is going out on a limb just a little bit, but I have a sneaking suspicion that somebody saw ice on his tour bus or something to do with people around him wearing like Ice Cube t-shirts. They saw ice and they took one of their EDC Molotov cocktails, as one does, and decided to firebomb the bus. And that was probably the last straw for Trump and a lot of the money that is flowing in and out of Portland. So it would seem that President Trump has deemed that the day does require an AK, at least in Portland. So we're going to see how this works out, but my guess is it might be a pretty spicy next couple of weeks. We'll have to see, though. Last time the National Guard got sent into Portland, they didn't really do much. They had their hands tied and they watched buildings burn. So maybe things have changed. I don't know. We'll see. But keep your head on a swivel, that's for sure. So that's all I have for the United States for this week. Much more to come next week, I'm afraid. But let's move over to Northern Europe for right now, and let's discuss another phenomenon of the internet that is, I think, probably going to develop over the next few weeks, and that is the drone reports throughout Scandinavia at large. So right up front, there are shenanigans afoot with these drone reports. Just like in New Jersey, it started with legitimate drone reports that actually shut down Copenhagen Airport as well as the port there, and a few random other airports around Denmark. These were legit reports. They were quite clearly photographed and videoed by ground personnel and passengers after aircraft had already been, cleared from the airspace, and there's these drones still flying around. So the initial reports on the first day and maybe the second day or even the third day, these were legit, right? These were like serious enough to where they shut down airspace for a good portion of the region. At the time, and I guess even now, the speculation was that it's either one of two things. It's either Russia trying to poke, or it's Ukraine trying to poke. Either Russia trying to assert dominance because they're the ones who even admitted to violating the airspaces of several different air corridors over the past few days, so they've done that quite a bit. And Russia's known for this sort of thing, so it wouldn't really be that surprising if Russia tried to send some unarmed drones over Denmark just to poke, But the other side of the coin is that it might be Ukraine trying to false flag people into thinking it's Russia and stuff like that. I don't know. You take your pick, whatever theory you want. It doesn't really matter. I don't care either way. The drone reports were real at first, but now they've kind of spun out of control, so after these first fixed-wing drone reports emerged in Denmark, more reports came out on that same day a few hours later in Oslo in Norway. These reports were also genuine. A couple of dudes from Singapore were flying a quadcopter over a military installation, so we know what was going on there. A little bit of spying activity going on, so not particularly rare. This kind of thing happens probably hundreds of times a week throughout various sensitive sites around Europe, but the timing of it made everybody start freaking out again, and you guys know it. When people start looking at the sky at night, they start seeing things. And like clockwork, now there were multiple reports of drones every single night for the past few nights in Europe. And the real drones that are legit, that were confirmed by military sources, confirmed by civilian air traffic control, and resulted in airspace being shut down, those are now hard to pick out from the initial stuff. And of course, like I mentioned before, fifth generation warfare, information warfare is a huge part of living in society today. And what did I catch a few days ago? Well, I caught several bot accounts pushing the same photographs of alleged drones from New Jersey. These scammers were going back a few months ago, finding those pictures and reposting them and saying, look, drones are over Oslo again, and it turns out it's just a picture of a 737 at night, trying to land at the airport. Just be advised, there's a lot of fake stuff circulating right now. It's literally a nightmare trying to sort this stuff out. I'm not that interested in it, but considering that Russia, Ukraine, the war is kind of still quite dynamic, and there's, advances being made on all fronts, this is kind of a thing to be aware of. But because some random dude is running 400 accounts in Mumbai and is trying to engagement farm, it makes it hard for people to find out exactly what's going on in the world. So that's kind of the challenge moving forward in this, current time. And it's just something to be aware of as we move forward. So, I think with that, we will roll up today with the Intercepted GhostNet reports, or rather, my failures this week. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I was sabotaged right during the GhostNet window. I was the victim of a critical telecommunications sabotage operation carried out by the highest ranking authorities, meaning that a squirrel chewed down my radio antenna during a rainstorm and I couldn't go out to fix it, lest I be struck by lightning. As strange as this is actually kind of a common thing, so it's just kind of a reminder that Murphy's Law will strike when you least expect it, right? That's the whole point of it. And in this case, it quite literally came down and my SWR went garbage right during the heaviest rainstorm when my Starlink also was not working due to the heavy rain. So everything compounded to prevent me from accessing my own radio network this week. Anyway, these things happen. It's not a big deal, but I don't have any screenshots for you this week. Hopefully it was a good net. But it's also a reminder that we're still in hurricane season, so there is still, over the next few days, going to be some kind of tropical depression-ish weather system, whatever it is at this point, I don't know, off the East Coast. So from Florida, probably all the way to Virginia, you're going to have a lot of pretty good-sized rain bands coming in, and it might affect things over the next few weeks, because apparently it's supposed to get here right around Thursday, so right around radio net time. But either way, no time like the present to make sure that your radio stuff's all good to go, and that your perimeter is set and your security details are posted to make sure that the covert Black Ops Squirrel team cannot infiltrate and ruin your communications networks. But either way, we'll call it a day this week, and we'll get back to it on Monday, and hopefully the nation doesn't burn down between now and then. But if it does, I'll have a report written on it. But thank you guys for all of your support. I really do appreciate it. It really does help keep things going here. And I will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.